Welcome to the webinar 2003-2004 ACPA Senior Scholars Grant. We're excited this year to move it forward, and we're doing the webinar open for anyone here, as well as we're going to post it on the ACPA website. So thank you for coming and spending a little time. My name is Penny Pasquay, pronouns are she, her, and I am professor at Ohio State University and the Ohio State University in the Higher Ed and Student Affairs program, as well as founding director of the Qual Lab that works with qualitative methodologies. Jimena, do you want to introduce yourself and Rishi?
Sure. I'm Jimena Zúñiga, she, her, ella pronouns. I'm a professor at UMass Amherst and am thinking about retiring in May. Seriously thinking about retirement in May. That's part of the fog, I think. Okay, Rishi?
Yeah, hello, my name is Rishi Sriram, and I am in the higher ed programs at Baylor University, where I serve as associate professor. And this is my first year as a senior scholar.
Congratulations.
So nice. Big news with the retirement and potential for retirement, and so glad to work with both of you. I really appreciate you both in the senior scholars as well so much. So here's our time together. Right now we're doing the introductions, then we're going to do a land acknowledgement. Rishi's going to talk a little bit about ACPA senior scholars overall so that you know the program and who the readers are going to be, the subcommittee. And then we'll talk a bit about the strategic imperative, ACPA's strategic imperative on racial justice and decolonization. Talk a little bit about a framework. There's many frameworks for research designs, but what we mean about actually connecting it with the ACPA's strategic imperative, research with that together. Jimena came up with a good example last year on it. We have a slide, and we also have a slide on taking action with the imperative and the Q&A, but we can have more of a conversation. It is just fine. So wherever we go with the conversation today sounds perfect. And so I'll hand it over to Jimena.
Yeah, and if you could, can you screen share the land acknowledgement for all of us? It's not in I think it's in the next page. There's a link. But, anyway, I think, it's the four of us. I think we all practice this practice. But I think for me, it's important that we, acknowledge the lands we're living on and sitting in, and also think about what kind of actions we can take to repair the harm and find ways to, I don't even use the word coexist, but I think that, and I think this acknowledgement today has a very particular, flavor. That's not the right word, but it comes across a little bit different given what's the conflict in Israel and Palestinian, who are two groups who, there's a lot of land issues in that context. People were moved out, moved in, other people decided for them. So it's a little bit of a similar pattern, yet with a very different history. So I think that's a good reminder that acknowledging dispossession of land, acknowledging the need for reparations, and the history of the land that we live and sitting on is important because it's real and it can lead with very, very acute conflicts. So I think it's I thought it was very powerful, the statement that ACPA did around, and I'm not going to read it, but indeed ACPA did a big statement a few days ago, on the 16th of last week. That's good. To be honest, I hadn't read it till this morning. But I thought it's a very nice statement because it really acknowledges the harm on both sides, but also the grieving and the need for change. And I think that's important. So I think I'm going to stop there.
Great. Well, let me just give a brief overview of the Senior Scholars Program. This is a program that's existed for a long time, since 1984. And it is essentially purposed so that people who are senior scholars, and we include in that scholar practitioners, senior scholar practitioners, can have a voice in not only ACPA and its leadership processes and its programs, but also, I think more importantly, for the field. So we seek to be an advisory council to ACPA while doing our own practical initiatives to try to improve the field in terms of both research and practice. Our mission is to promote scholarship and inquiry to advance knowledge of students and student affairs in higher education and to leverage collective wisdom. Some of the more practical things that we do, we're really proud of. The first basic one is that we are a self-perpetuating group. So we select our own membership and have people rotate off accordingly. So we select the senior scholars, and we also select what we call emerging scholars. If our guests and those viewing this recording are not familiar with the Emerging Scholars Program, it is a vibrant program that acknowledges people, faculty who are earlier in their career, doing wonderful things, have really shown some real impact scholarship-wise in the field. And so Emerging Scholar is an award. It is kind of this commendation, but maybe as importantly, there's a grant that comes along with that to help these early career faculty continue to launch. We provide sessions at ACPA on topics that we think are important and timely. And then, of course, why we're here today, we have the Senior Scholars Grant that we hope to use to help scholars better our field. So specifically about the grant, since that's really our topic for today, we know that you want to know, like, what will make a great proposal. And that is a very important, relevant question. However, we also want you to think about the work that you're doing and not just form your work to meet what we desire. Ultimately, we're looking for our purposes to match with scholars' purposes in order to use this grant funding for specific scholarly reasons. So we do want what all, I think, peer-reviewed research would want: originality, clarity, potential impact are all really important. But we also really want this to tie to a couple of goals that ACPA has. And rather than go deeply into those, I want to alert you and to recommend that you review ACPA's strategic imperative. I know that Jimena will talk about a part of that strategic imperative in relation to racial justice and decolonization. But we do want you to know that although we hope to support through this grant funding our applicants' research, it is their research. So the research belongs to you, and you're encouraged, but not required, to submit it to an ACPA publication outlet, with the two prominent ones being the Journal of College Student Development and About Campus. You do need to be a member of ACPA, and you do need to be the PI, the principal investigator, on the grant as a member. And this award, because we have the Senior Scholar designation, and because we have the Emerging Scholar designation, we're really trying to reach out beyond those groups with this award, and therefore we actually do not allow senior scholars and emerging scholars eligibility for this award. what is the award? Well, we have $10,000. And part of what we're looking to do is to give that and distribute that as we see fit based upon the given applications in a given year. So it's possible that we wouldn't feel like any applications fit, what we're asking in terms of our strategic imperative and decolonization. And so we would, certainly have the privilege to say we're not going to award any this year. It's also possible that we could award 2 or 3. We want to be cognizant of the fact that because we have a total sum, that we don't want to divide it up to where it doesn't make much of a difference for scholarly contribution. So we're looking at, at least 1, possibly 2 or 3 that we would award. And here's the timeline, an overview of the timeline. The call for proposals went out just over a month ago. And the due date for our proposals are November 10th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern. And the week of December 4th, we as senior scholars will have come together and made decisions and announced those decisions that week. And the hope is that in May, by early May, the awardees would give a mid-year project update just to make sure things are going as planned, or if not going as planned, that we communicate those things early so that we all continue to have common expectations. And then by December of next year, so 2024, a little over a year from now, our hope is that the research would be completed and a report would be submitted to the senior scholars. So again, this doesn't mean that you have to submit a publication by then, but that you would at least give us in writing a sense of what occurred with the money that was given. And then finally, we invite you to present at ACPA the spring after that. So that would be 2 conferences from now in March, most likely March of 2025, that you would present this research, and we would have a session specifically set aside for you to do so.
Thank you, Richie. That was wow. That was a very detailed summary, and here maybe we, I think I like to frame this, but I think I like to engage in a conversation with Ashley, because how could I put it? I think this statement is a beautiful statement. It provides a lot of guidance. It was developed in 2019, or finalized in 2019, I believe. And I think scholars, I don't think I want to go into the details, but I think we often struggle with how to make it real in our scholarly lives. So we notice this as people apply for emerging scholars, for senior scholars, I think we all struggle with how to embody this vision. And I think we're not used to doing this in research. Some of us maybe more than others, but indeed it's a tension point. It's a tension point, and we use the words, but the words don't always mean much in the practice of the research. So I think at least Penny and I last year, we were very, very careful in looking for that. So, I don't want to perform here, but I think I want to be helpful and help us think maybe how help us have a conversation about how would this manifest, how this could manifest in a proposal. So, well, this is a history, and I don't think it's a history. It's from 2019 and before. I think to me this is a social movement document. Also, I think Student Affairs is very much an activist institution, organization, and I think the players, the leaders, saw the call to put something in writing, partly due to the Say Her Name movement and all the Black Lives Matter movement that was protesting for all these terrible crimes, police crimes especially, that were done in that time and that continue to be done. But indeed, that was the propeller for this. So that's the context that gave motivated people in the organization to move forward and draft this document. And I think some of these things are probably familiar to you as a good SJE informed scholar, from all forms of racial link to the importance of intersectional lens, the fact that we all have been colonized in one way or another, and that's a core struggle in higher ed, and how to navigate that is even more core. As I tell my students, we need to learn APA. To me, that's a very powerful way in which psychology hijacked education, and we became colonized by those parameters. Yet, to communicate with each other, we have to have some guidelines and rules. So yes, it can be read as a colonizing practice, but yet it's also some rules of engagement that is the way for communication between scholars, and so we honor the work that came before us, et cetera, et cetera. So it's complicated. It's not clear cut. There was one more before you move there. Can you go back? Well, of course, advocacy, the need for advocacy, the need for engaging in collective education research work. And last, indeed, that we all need to grow and learn and change. So these are all, we have a new, hi, Jermaine, good to see you. Jermaine Freeman, good to see you. So now we have, did we lose Ashley Carpenter? Okay, so let's move to the next slide. So Jermaine, we're reviewing the strategic imperative document with the goal of trying to unpack how this document may shape your research proposal. What are we looking for? We're not looking for people to just use these words, but to demonstrate different ways that they're embodying this imperative, whether in the research questions, in the methodology, in how they interview participants, in how they write the analysis, in how they think about implications. So, and indeed, this call is a humanization call. I do think that that's important. We're trying to humanize scholarly work as well as practitioner work. I think to me that's in the center. How do we humanize the process, and how do we hear people more? How do we communicate what we hear, and how we invite them sometimes to join the research process? Next. If there's something you want to add, Rich or Penny, please do. So what are the guiding principles? Responsibility. Take responsibility for what we're doing, for our actions, but also engaging in co-responsible leadership. Questioning the knowledge that we use. So that's important. It's not always easy because we're very embedded in them, and we often don't see the gaps. This is why it's also helpful to build collaborations, because then we have more people seeing and more people questioning and more people helping us connect the dots. That we embrace agency, meaning that we are actors that can create change, that we engage in authentic relationships, indeed building on this humanistic lens. That's important, because at the end, what do we have? We have relationships. We create change through relationships. We educate through relationships, and we do research in relationship. So, and that's a good one, suspending efficiency. I don't know if this is, that's a nice aspiration, but I think we're all stuck with it. So here we're moving the agenda and being efficient and jumping and not even inviting you to talk, because to honor efficiency. So I think that graphic that's in the document, and you can download the document from the ACPA website, I found it very helpful, because it highlights three different core concepts: critical consciousness, humanization, and radical democracy. Well, those are big words, but anyway, I don't know. How would you define critical consciousness in this context, Benny? Because it's a big one.
It is. It's such a big question. And I know that in our committee meeting, we actually added word count to this proposal process because it is such a huge, all three of these are huge concepts. And, with this mode of efficiency and only using so many pages, it's really, it's not enough. And so we did make a change to increase the number of pages because to me, in reading these, it really is the researcher or research teams that express your approaches to critical consciousness, humanization, and radical democracy. It's how you all put it in the proposal that we read and respond to, and we want to fund great, exciting work that will make the contribution in these ways. It doesn't really get asked at your question, but I did hear you in terms of inviting. What does this mean for people in their role? And I appreciate what you were saying about how it's at every stage. It's as you design the question, as you think through your theoretical approaches, your methodology, methods, and the dissemination, like thinking it through and having the imperative really present in every part of this. I really appreciated what you said there, Jimena.
And I think, we're reading Professor Hill Collins this week in my class, so I was thinking about her 7 dimensions of critical intersectional theory. But things that came up that I draw from there is, indeed, we have to question the knowledge we use, but in context. So who are the people we're working with? What's the purpose of the research? What might be the gaps or the hegemonies dominating that quest. So I think it's about integrating knowledge, but in context. And I think for me, that's important. And in relationship to the people that we're working with. So to me, those are really, of course, that involves questioning power and all that, but I think that's for me is important. And then indeed, agency. How can we emphasize agency? And that can be framed in different ways. Could be post the research, during the research, inviting participants to join, etc. I think the humanization piece is more easy to maybe grasp, and yet I don't think it's always easy to enact in a research relationship. So I think we all know what we mean, but I think the rules of engagement are such that often they prevent us from engaging in a humanistic way with participants. And we often fail in we end doing instrumental relationships more than humanistic relationships. I think about Buber there. I, thou, I, it. And indeed, the last one, radical democracy, I think that's a big one, but I think the idea is that we're in process and that we are trying to respond to real people in real time rather than compliance. I think that's, and I think institutions strive for compliance, but not for co-responsibility. So I'll stop there. But so what's the role of my research is a big question. And how do I invite people to look at findings or the knowledge created to impact change?
Ooh, huge questions. So we just wanted to offer one framework of many. If people are saying, well, how do I do this? This is a real tall order. And it is, and it's designed in a hopeful way that we are able to make contributions that make a difference. So, many of us were trained in the very didactic kind of here of the 5 stages of research, right? And we know that it's so much, there's so much more to this, but wanted to share that kind of hourglass about all the problem statement or ideas of context and theoretical or conceptual frameworks, really going down to your research question, your set question, what are you trying to answer, maybe in community with, right? And then actually mapping data as in quotation marks, right? We talk about humanization, and data is sometimes used and sometimes not, right? You use the terms that make sense with your paradigmatic approach, your approach to the research, your design, researcher reflexivity and positionality. Diplomate and ACPA senior scholar D.L. Stewart wrote quite a bit on reflexivity and the performativity of researcher reflexivity and how it really should move beyond that. So that's a great piece to take a look at. But then also, what are you thinking of in terms of your findings and discuss and implications? I mean, right now we're focusing on a design, right? And so I work with my students a lot on, well, what are all those phases? And this is actually a piece I'm working with Sage now on a book where I'm making this more accessible to people, but thinking through all these different kind of boxes for collection and analysis, that etic or theoretical kind of analysis, or the emic, emergent analysis. What are your decisions as a researcher? What will you do? And for us, as Jimena already pointed out, really taking a look at the imperative throughout is important for this grant process. And also, I want to acknowledge and also provide another example about non-didactic approaches, right? That sheet that I work with the students is very didactic, right? And research is not that didactic. And so here's one great example: borderline mestiza feminism with Ellen Neimark and Cynthia Saavedra, and they actually flip this model. They start with community. They pay attention to the in-betweens and the embodied, and really use BMF as a tool, as well as an epistemological approach. It is not dualistic. It actually uproots that dualistic thinking. And so I wanted to make sure that while providing models, and we're also making sure that these models are open, that they're transformative. They're the ones you're choosing, right? It does not have to be Cresswell's 5 stages of a research project, right? You get to decide and talk about what is helping you to think through this work. And then you look at these kind of side by side, we think about what are the connections for this grant, and we intentionally ask for your research design, whether it's didactic or not, right, as connected with the imperative, and thinking of these as very connected, in more than just a quick mention in the proposal, but actually speak to the ways in which this is happening throughout. We have a couple examples from the field. Thinking about, like, what are you focusing on, who, how to disseminate, thinking through all these pieces. I know, Jimena, you had mentioned this article last year as a good example. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think it's, to me, this article, I think, illustrated some of the components. And I think what I want to say is that, and I suggest that you may want to take a picture and read it. But I think for me, maybe building on what Penny was saying, is you may choose to embody, 5 things of the statement or of this will, and maybe let us know why you focus on this and not on that. I think that if you help the reader say, these are the boundaries that I'm working with. So in these boundaries, I'm going to try to enact, embody, carry out the following principles. And yet I'm not able to do X and Y because, I think that it's more like a conversation, but I think getting specific is helpful, and being, I think for me, that's the main thing. How can you make it more tangible throughout, but not in every step? Could be in some steps more than others, and that's fine. Oh yeah, that's another piece.
Yeah,
Yeah,
another
yeah,
good
that's-
example.
Yes. What was the name of this article?
Yeah, I
I don't
can have. And this is
Oh,
the
yeah, they've
ways
come.
in which
Yes,
they.
yes, yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
see.
It's
So
fine,
just
yeah.
another good example, and there's other good examples in the special issue that DL Stewart and Stephanie Waterman, two diplomates, a part of
In
the Senior
2020, yeah.
Scholars.
There were two articles there that really spoke, two research pieces that spoke to this. There were many
Yes.
special issues, but there were a couple empirical pieces.
Yes. And so I think maybe we should just open
Yes.
up the conversation, but here are some questions. How might you infuse it in all the different aspects of a research process? How are they interconnected and iterative? How can you reflect on this in the word limitations, right? The struggle that we all have. And I'm going to just stop there so we can open up for conversation and answer questions and just chat with you all. Rishi, I'll hand it to you for the Q&A, really.
Yeah, great. Truly, we want to be helpful. So please, we don't feel like if there was something we didn't cover that you should have known. We want to hear whatever's on your mind with this process.
I'll say first, good afternoon. Jermaine Freeman. I am been mentored and supported by Dr. Ashley Carpenter. She was my dissertation chair. And ever since
Nice.
I crossed the stage, I've been on her coattail. So I try to be wherever she goes in efforts to learn as much as I can. So we came into this session today with one thought, and we may be shifting our thoughts, which is perfectly fine. My primary work in my dissertation was to discuss the social perception of Black men in society and how it impacts Black male leaders in K-12 spaces particularly. I'm currently a doctoral student advisor for Appalachian State, and I've seen in my time, I started my doctoral program in 2019, and I went from student to now working for the same program. And I've seen in my time, in my particular cohort, we had 3 Black males come in. I was the only one to graduate from my cohort. Over the years, we've had not proportionally graduation rates across Black males. Those who come in to actually apply, and then those who actually finish, just haven't been good numbers. And so I've been really thinking about what has happened and kind of thinking through what showed up in my dissertation work versus what's happening with Black males getting doctorates. I don't have a question yet in regards to what is the question I want to ask in regards to this particular grant, but I think there's a connection between the experiences that happen with leaders in K-12 spaces and Black males getting doctorate degrees. And so that's kind of where we're sitting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's very exciting. I think there's a lot of room for you, depending on your methodology, to use a decolonizing methodology. So I think that, and to follow some of these guidelines. Yeah. So I don't want to tell you what to do, but clearly, yes, inviting conversation with some of these former students to understand more how, and you being in the conversation. I said maybe that would be the humanistic component. That I don't know, you do affinity groups by people who finish and people who didn't finish, and maybe they come together at some point, because that might be delicate to bring people who finished and didn't finish together. But I do think that there's a lot of possibility there. And there's a lot of good research. There's so much new research about Black men in higher education that, you can build on. So there's a lot more than 10 years ago.
Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, there's more research. So I think if you if you go through the College of Student Development Journal, I tend to get paper copies, so I flip the table of contents, and then I see things. I see a lot of things there. And there are some good scholars in ACPA who think about those things, like Professor Stephen Quay or our colleague.
Yeah.
What's the name of our colleague? He's a diplomat now.
Yeah, I would encourage you to be somewhat defensive in terms of when people see K-12. I think an initial reaction is going to be, oh, this is the wrong space, and I don't think it is, but I think it would behoove you to set up for why you think this is relevant to the higher education space. And I think you just did that, but I just want to encourage you to do that in your proposal, to make people aware that you're not in the wrong place. You didn't lose your way, that you know what you're doing, and this is relevant.
Okay. Thanks so much for that.
And there are people who are writing about that. Like I know that Ashley's mentor has done writing about Crystal has done writing about and research on college going identity and how that impacts students of color from Springfield, in this case, Massachusetts. But there are people in higher ed who are looking at those questions. So it's not, it was not a thing, but now it's a thing. So more people are thinking about questions like, that's one way people frame the question. It's college going identity. I don't know if I would frame it that way, but that's real. That's one way people frame the question. So I think you find the right work that you can build on that. So,
and
yep.
And unfortunately, I do have to leave in just a couple minutes. I have a talk right after this. But this is super helpful. And I think for me, I just have a couple logistic questions as well. And so I think that this is a great grant. I think the work that we do, and for Jermaine didn't mention this, but we also use Black Crit as a theory and kind of framing some of that stuff. And that's, deeply rooted in these aspects of decolonization and, talking about racial justice. So for sure, a lens that we have there. But one of the things I just wanted to clarify that this was even an appropriate space for some of our work, and in terms of thinking of being a senior scholar. So is priority given to people that are deemed as more of a senior scholar in the field? I think that, yeah. So is there some kind of—
Great question. Absolutely not. The only senior scholar part of this is that the senior scholars sponsor the grant. That's all there is.
Yes.
Okay, so it can be anyone at any level, essentially.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Okay.
And researchers and practitioners.
Yes.
So we welcome research in practitioner spaces. If it's researchers and practitioners working together, scholar practitioners, we have, it's all open. And I think just that focus on ACPA, and as you all were mentioning, Dr. Freeman, if Black men aren't in a PhD program, how can you complete it, right? And so and I hear you taking up from high school through and making sure that college going, and even though the ACPA is centered on college and university environments, there's a direct connection, and some work has been done. I know they mentioned some people, and I think this will be a great place for you to maybe foreground that part of the work, the college part of the work, and then, partner with other grants for some of the other work that you're doing, if it is just in the K-12 space, right? So that way it works with your whole agenda. Yeah. Exciting. I think also, as you mentioned, Dr. Carpenter, Black Crit absolutely maps on and fits here. And so what we've seen in the past is sometimes people mentioning, I'm working with trans first-gen students, or, I'm using Black Crit, but don't actually talk about how is it connected to the imperative. And so that's one suggestion that I hope we were able to make clear in the presentation, but I just wanted to reiterate again. So Black crit, as you mentioned, is absolutely infused with these concepts. And so how in your research is that connected with the imperative and moving forward in the work that you're doing? And that's one of those things that with ACPA senior scholars we're looking for, is that imperative to be a part of the framing of it, as opposed to just a quick mention. And so I think, as you already said, Black crit does lend itself quite well.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful context and being sure, as I guess I'm hearing, being very explicit of like, it's not just rooted as a theoretical framework, but it's embedded into the design of the project, the methodology, the data collection, etc. Okay.
As much, yeah, how it comes alive. And I think sometimes academics, we fail, we use big words and nice frameworks, but we don't really explain very well how we do this and how do we extract data.
Yeah.
And this is not about extracting, this is something different. So, but we're good at massaging. So this is where I think we care because we're trying to learn. To be honest, I do think that this is an imperative that was developed in 2019. I think it aligns well with practitioner work in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're trying to figure out how this aligns well, and we may have to rethink some things in the research world and the constraints that scholars have in that world. So it's helpful to know what's possible and why, and what is not possible and why in your proposal. I think that's fine. I think that's good.
And this might be my last question before I do head out. Is there a way, and maybe this is an offline question, but to have seen what some successful grants have looked like previously, or is that more kind of like a private information?
I think they're posted on the web.
Yeah, on the
website.
The topics, all the topics that have been funded are up there. We have not gotten approval to share the grant proposals at this point, but all the names and the titles are there. And just knowing the community who's received them in the past, my thought is that people are often really good about sharing that kind of information if you did reach out, but all the names and topic and titles are up there. I can put that in the chat too.
Yeah, so you can write to them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good questions. Thank you. Something for us to consider moving forward as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, this has been really great. I really appreciate this. And I hopefully look forward to you all reading our work that will come from this. And we'll be in touch, but I will have to head out. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
And so nice to see you. Nice surprise.
Yes, always great to see you, Jimena. And yeah, so nice seeing everybody. Nice to meet you all.
Good.
Bye.
Jermaine, do you have any other questions or thoughts?
No, she that's why I'm on her coattail. She does the right questions to ask. And so we'll talk with her and we'll go through and kind of make some decisions on the next steps.
Right.
Excellent. That sounds so good. Look forward to it.
Yeah,
Thank you for the
so
time
much.
today and for coming.
Yeah, thank you. I really learned a lot. This has been fun and exciting for me.
Right.
That's great. I'm so happy that this is helpful.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Thank
stop
you.
the recording now.